to let Nash Duki, who's the chairman of the KZN branch of the Institute of Waste Management, give a few words. Nash, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome. I just want to say a quick thank you at the beginning of this webinar to the organizers, panelists, and participants. And I'm sure this is a much needed webinar, and we look forward to the next couple of hour and a half of interaction. Just a brief note about the opening statement. The Institute is proud to be bringing information to the affected industries and our members on this overview of the extended producer responsibility regulations. It should be noted that this is a 90-minute glimpse into a complex process that has been underway for more than 4 years now, with hundreds of stakeholders across the affected industries involving numerous producer responsibility organizations, industry agencies, and non-profit corporations established to ultimately bring the EPR regs into force. None of this has been finalized yet, and it's all working in the process, and intensive engagements are still underway between all the stakeholders to hopefully get clarity before the deadline on 5th of May this year. The Institute of Waste Management of Southern Africa would like to thank the panelists who have taken some time off their precious day to shed some light on this matter. However, we reiterate that the panelists are not comprehensively representative of all the EPR stakeholders working towards the regulations and notices due to notices due by May this year, but rather colleagues in the industry who have indicated their willingness to contribute to today's session. In no way does the Institute endorse or support any single individual or organization represented here today. Our mandate is to share information to industry and members and nothing more. This has needed much needed topics of discussion around our tables of recent, and with the new EPR regulations, we're looking forward to this webinar. I'll give you some information about the Institute towards the end, and looking forward to a successful and interactive next hour and a half. So I'll hand over back to Mark, and we'll take it from there. Thank you, Mark, and everyone else.
Thank you so much, Nash. So just to give a brief explanation of what we are hoping to go through in this hour and a half. So first of all, we're just going to get each of the panel participants or the panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves and how they are involved in the EPR regulations. And thereafter, there were quite a few questions that were submitted by attendees in the registration during the registration, and so we've sent these questions through to the panelists for them to develop answers to, and hopefully we'll be able to pose these questions to the panelists and get greater clarity on those areas that people had questions. So without further ado, the first panelist that will just briefly introduce himself is Anban Pillay from the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. Anban?
Good afternoon, colleagues. As you have already introduced me, I'm Anban Pillay. I'm a public servant working for the department, and I do have a role to play in the development of the existing regulations or the regulations that have been published. Yeah, that's basically me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anban. Next on the list of panelists is Shabir Jitam from Packaging SA. Shabir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Yeah, I represent Packaging South Africa, and just to give you a very brief overview of what Packaging South Africa is about, we are a non-profit organization which was established as long back as 1985. And our primary members are converters who represent more than 70% of all the South African packaging manufacturers in South Africa. In addition, we have members such as raw material suppliers, suppliers to the packaging industry, brand owners, some retailers, industry associations, and very importantly, all the 7 existing PROs are members of Packaging SA, and they do have board representation. So as Packaging SA, we serve as a single voice for our members, and we focus significantly on packaging as well as the impact on packaging on the environment. We have regular interaction with all tiers of government, and we work very closely with my colleague from government, Anban Pillay, and his colleagues from the department on setting environmental policy, which does affect packaging. We do lobby with government, and also there are times when we disagree as well, not just for the sake of disagreeing, but to find the best solutions, not only for government, but industry, but more importantly for all South Africans. As Packaging South Africa, we do welcome the EPR regulations in South Africa. We have been working as part of a task team, which was formed by the minister, and I've been part of the task team to see where certain issues there was misalignment, and we're working on that. So we look forward to the implementation of EPR in South Africa, and the key factor will be that all the current producer responsibility organizations we have are voluntary. So the implementation of EPR will certainly get free riders, will no longer have a free lunch. They will also, if they're classified as producers in terms of the legislation, they will certainly have to pay the relevant EPR fees to the producer responsibility organizations. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much, Shabir. The next panelist is Keith Anderson from IWMSA. Keith, over to you.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for this opportunity. So I represent E-Waste Association of South Africa, known as IWMSA. I formed IWMSA way back in 2005 and formally registered in 2008. And we've been operating on a voluntary basis as a PRO ever since then. We have a network across the whole of South Africa. We have roughly about 1,000 collection points established to deal with e-waste at end of life. As a PRO, we have members, producer members, OEMs, distributors, retailers, recyclers, refurbishers. The complete value chain is represented as our members. Right from the get-go, there's never been specific e-waste legislation. So we welcome EPR legislation. As already been said before, we've been negotiating and having discussions with what is now known as DEF, previously as DEA, around industry waste management plans. We've come a long way. In fact, we submitted the first industry waste management plan way back in 2010. So I think we're all very happy now that we've got to the end of the road, and the EPR legislation will come in place, which hopefully will do two things. Firstly, it'll create a level playing field for the industry, and also it'll give some clarity in the direction that we all need to go from the same hymn sheet. We as a country, we believe have lagged slightly behind on the continent, and hopefully these EPR regulations will help us and all our members and all the citizens back on the road to proper governance around EPR legislation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Keith. Then the next panelist is Patricia Schroeder. Patricia is representing Lightcycle SA, which is the PRO for lighting, but I'll let her explain a bit more. Patricia.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Can you see my screen? All good?
Yes, we can see your screen. Thanks.
Okay. Seems like I'm the only one that did some pictures today. Welcome and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. I'm going to do a quick introduction on Lightcycle SA. Just want to go to the next slide. Okay, and Lightcycle SA is a not-for-profit organization committed to delivering cost-effective compliance on behalf of our producer members. And it's also represents producers of the lighting sector industry who have a producer responsibility under the published EPR Regulations 2020 to organize and finance the environmental management of their products at the end of their lives. And Lifecycle SA has been operational since 2018 and has become the scheme of choice for lighting producers in South Africa across all sectors. And just to introduce myself, my name is Patricia Schroeder, and I've been appointed to represent Lifecycle SA, and I've also been fortunate to be a part of the task team and working with the group of people to review the regulations together with Anbin and his department. The way Lifecycle SA believes in its operational approach is to implement the all actors approach. And we believe that this will have a positive impact on weed collection in South Africa. So what does this mean? It means that the PRO and the producers, or the PRO with its producer members, will incorporate the municipalities, retailers, distributors, consumers, collectors, transporters, and treatment facilities and recyclers. And all of these actors will be advisory members and will be a part of the process in terms of EPR implementation. And of course, we will work very closely in terms of reporting and other activities with the Department of Environmental Affairs and Forestry and Fisheries, as well as other national authorities that are relevant to this process. Okay, just a short introduction to the membership. We have a general membership, which consists of producers and other stakeholders in the value chain. And these consist of large enterprises and patron members, small enterprises, medium enterprises, national, provincial, and local government institutions, academia, and then individual members such as your technicians and so on. That will be form part of the general membership. And then the producer EPR membership, which is available to obligated producers only. And this will be producers of lighting products, class of products to which extended producer responsibility is applicable as per the Section 18 notice. And then in summary, we believe PROs will have a vital role in assisting producers to identify shared constraints and synergistic opportunities. And along with a stronger collaboration across the value chain, a mindset shift will be needed not only for legislative compliance, but also for the benefit of the consumer and the environment. There will be intensive consumer awareness campaigns, which will also help to drive behavior change. And then EPR will see an investment in collection infrastructure, not only providing consumers with more convenient recycling facilities, but also a concerted recovery effort at the pre-consumer post-industrial phase. And EPR will be about the journey. This is important, not the destination, and you definitely cannot go it alone. And that is my bit for today. Thank you everybody for joining, and I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Unfortunately, the other panelist, Ashley Duploy from ERA PRO, had load shedding and is not able to access his internet at the moment. So he will carry on trying to access Zoom. But for now, that will be all the panelists. Just like to introduce, as well as the panelists, Chris White is also part on the webinar here. So Chris, maybe do you want to just introduce yourself briefly?
I think just briefly, obviously I'm here as part of the KZN committee with the Institute of Waste Management. I think we've had discussions going backwards and forwards for a while regarding the uncertainty of what's happening with EPRs. That's why this was put together. Mark has ably taken on the task of putting together this. But I'm here just to provide a bit of guidance, poke some questions, poke the bear, and I'll be on the call throughout the whole process.
Thanks, Chris. So Chris and myself are committee members of the KZN branch of the Institute of Waste Management. I'm also, well, my normal job is part-time at eWaste Africa as Innovations Manager and lecturer at UKZN Chemical Engineering specifically in waste management and also conducting some research with the university. So that is basically the introduction of our panel. Chris and myself will be asking the questions as Chris mentioned. So maybe we can move across to the questions that we have for the panelists. So the first question is for Anbin. And Anbin, when is the EPR legislation going to be promulgated, and by what date does my company need to be legally compliant?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Maybe the question is unclear to me. The regulations were published on the 5th of November 2020 for immediate implementation. However, on the 15th of January, we published a notice postponing the effective date from the 5th of May 2021. That's the effective date. And I didn't hear the second part, sorry.
So the second part is, by what date does my company need to be legally compliant?
By what date? The regulations provide for registration, which currently ends on the 4th of November 2021. And also by the 4th of November, you should be part of a scheme or operating a scheme currently.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
And then I think that kind of leads into the next question, our activities and or scheme with the department.
Sorry, Mark, that's a very bad line.
Okay,
I didn't
sorry.
hear that.
Sorry, the question was, how do we register our activities and or scheme with the department?
Okay, I see now you're following the order of the questions, then I'm with you. Okay. The registration, the department has developed an online system for registration. And come the 5th of May, the online system will be switched on. There will be a link on the South African Waste Information Systems website, which they can follow or click on and follow. And you fill in your information. It will then ask you a few questions that you have to answer. Once you press the submit button, it will automatically send you an acknowledgement of receipt. We will process the application electronically. And once we are happy with the inputs that you've made on the registration portal, then you will receive your reference number via email. Everything is electronic. So we've removed the human interface from it due to frustrations, and also with COVID, we had to make a plan B. So yeah, it's an electronic system. It will be available from the 5th of May. Thank you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I actually have a few here for you at the beginning, Anbin. So maybe just if you could give us a bit of an understanding of who would need to register, and in the regulations, there's a definition of a producer or an end user. What can you give us a better understanding of what those specific people that are referred to in the regulations are?
Okay, it seems like the questions I have are slightly different to what you're reading. So you said quite a few things. The producer and the PRO, you mentioned those. And I think the main part of the question is, who is the end user? The end user is meant to be the consumer. And in this case, it could be me with my laptop, or the light that's above my head as the end user of the equipment. It could also be the hotel I'm in now. I'm currently at the hotel. They are the end user. So that is how we would look at the end user. Now, if you're looking at who must register, I think the regulations do provide that guidance. And the different categories of producers. Currently, as we stand today, it's for producers, it's for importers, it's for brand owners, it's for refurbishers, and it's for PROs. Excuse me. I hope I've answered all your questions that came as one question.
Yes, no, you have answered them. And maybe to follow on from that question, there was another question that was asked by an attendee is, who is considered as the producer or the brand owner? Are these only those who are established businesses in the market, or also those that sell through distributors or online, but without any established presence in the market? So maybe the question is, who is considered the producer?
Sorry, what's it, Mark?
So the question is, who is considered as the producer?
Okay, if you look at the regulations currently, the producer is the actual manufacturer of the item if he's based here in South Africa. And if he's not based here, then it will be the importer. And if it's a local product that has a specific brand, it will be the brand owner. I think that's how the regulations define it. Now, you would also get somebody that buys an old computer, refurbishes it, and puts it back on the market. That will also be known as the producer. Excuse me. I just want to grab some water to drink. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you've answered the questions there. So maybe the next question is directed more towards the representatives from the PROs. So maybe if I can ask Keith to answer this question is, how do I join a PRO? Would it cost me to join a PRO? And can I be a member of more than one PRO if I'm a producer of multiple products?
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, so the quick answer is yes. Each PRO would have a membership list with varying types of memberships, and there would be a cost associated with that. But it might differ from PRO to PRO. So in other words, for example, at IWMSA, you join and you pay an annual subscription fee, which is a very nominal fee. Depending if you're a small one-man business, you would pay 1,650 Rand per annum, up to if you're a large company employing 500 plus people, you'd pay 5,000 Rand. That's just a membership fee. Then in addition to that, there would be an EPR fee, which would cover the amount of product that, and this is only for producers or importers or distributors or brand owners, whatever they put onto the market, whether they put 100 washing machines onto the market, whether they put 100 toasters, they would pay a fee pro rata rated to the anticipated volumes they're going to put onto the market for that particular year. And that fee is used to make sure that the take back scheme, that the consumer can take their products at the end of life and to a drop-off point at no charge, and the fee gets used to ensure that that process is fully managed. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. And just a quick question: how do you actually join your? So IWMSA, is it just an application that has to happen, and who can join IWMSA?
And so, yeah, very similar to what Anbin was saying. So if you go onto our existing website and you click on the tab for become a member, it'll take you to a membership form. You just complete that, answer all the questions, submit that through to us. We process it within 24 to 48 hours. And then you'll be issued a membership certificate. And I stress the word, it's a membership certificate. It's not a waste license certificate, because there seems to be some confusion around that.
Okay,
and then,
great.
sorry, and then you get sent a digital certificate.
Okay, great. Thanks. I see Shabir has his hand up. I was actually going to come and ask you next, Shabir. Could that same question, possibly from the packaging side of things, can you maybe answer that again?
Yes, thanks, Mark. In terms of the packaging PROs, the model will be, I think we just need to explain currently what the situation is. We have 7 PROs for packaging, paper and packaging in South Africa. For plastics, we have 4. I will name them if that's okay with you. We have Petco for PET, Polyco for all polyolefins, South African Vinyl Association for vinyls, and Polystyrene Association for polystyrene. Then the other 3 PROs we have is the Glass Recycling Company, obviously for glass, Fiber Circle for paper, and MetPack for metal packaging. Now, all these PROs, they will, I mean, producers in terms of the regulations will pay an EPR fee. And, but there will be a dual model where most of the PROs will also have membership fees or associate membership fees. But I think what's important to make clear to everyone today is some people of the belief if you just pay your membership fees, you will meet your EPR regulations in terms of what is gazetted. If you are a producer, as from 5th of November this year, it becomes mandatory for a producer to pay the EPR fees. So I'd just like to stress that paying a membership fee, which Keith mentioned his was about 1,600 Rand, does not cover your EPR regulations if you're a producer. So we work on similar models, and the EPR fee will be based on a rate per ton, and it will be different for different material streams, depending on what needs to be done in terms of meeting the EPR obligations.
Thank you, Shabir. Patricia, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I would echo both Keith and Shabir. It's very similar the way the life cycle PRO works. As I explained earlier, there are 2 membership structures. There's a general membership, and that is an annual fee that is charged based on the type of member that joins. And that is, they get various deliverables and benefits for that. And then the EPR producer members, which are the EPR obligated producers, which will be members in terms of paying the EPR fee based on the product categories and products put on market. And that will also be determined by weight. But in some cases where the weight might be difficult to determine, such as very small items, that may be charged per item. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patricia. So maybe I just want to try and mull over this a bit. So how it will work is if I am a producer, I should join the PRO that would be pertinent to my product. I would pay a membership fee to the PRO, but then on top of that, whatever products I'm selling, I then have to pay a rate per ton for that, which would then go towards the end of life recycling or management of the product. Is that essentially what everyone is saying here?
If I can jump in terms of the general membership, that is completely voluntary, and you decide as an individual whether you want to reap the benefits of the membership. But the EPR producer membership, as you know, will be obligatory as per the regulations. That's how the lighting PRO will operate.
Okay, Keith, you were wanting to say something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to just add on a point because I wasn't sure if we covered it. So in some instances, some producers may well be members of more than one PRO because they've got different waste streams. So that might well be the case, yes.
Okay, great, thanks. I think that was the one thing that wasn't covered in the answers. So the next question is maybe for Shabir, is will municipalities have to approach the PROs individually for support for separation at source recycling or recycling diversion programs? Or will there be a single central PRO entity that can prevent overlap and simplify engagement and interaction?
Yes, Mark, we have been taking this into consideration as Packaging SA in conjunction with producer responsibility organizations, the 7 that I did mention earlier. I think as a starting point, just to give a bit of background, Packaging SA has been engaging with SALGA for a while. The South African Government Association, which represents the 257 odd municipalities which we have in the country. So I believe it's imperative that there is collaboration between industry and municipalities, as it will be a key success factor in terms of successful separation at source. Earlier this year, Packaging SA facilitated a session with the PROs and SALGA, which was also attended by municipal representatives. And there we had overwhelming consensus on the importance of collaboration by all parties, that is municipalities as well as industry. In addition, I believe that collaboration between, there also needs to be collaboration with the waste management companies, who will also play an essential role in terms of waste collection, as well as with waste pickers. Post our meeting with SALGA, we have agreed that there will be further engagements between the paper and packaging sector and SALGA to address the details of how we will jointly initially roll out pilot projects and then long-term projects in terms of separation at source. Now, to answer your question, a bit long-winded, but anyway, Packaging SA, we are engaging with the PROs, and we will act as the overarching body for engagement with SALGA and the municipalities to ensure that there is a central reference point. All existing PROs, as I have indicated earlier, are members of Packaging SA, and we will ensure that a coordinated approach is adopted. In addition, as a material that will be separated at source, the paper and packaging will be commingled. So it will be counterproductive for each PRO to engage separately with municipalities, as it will increase costs if you have multiple collection systems for different material streams from the paper and packaging sector. In addition, we believe that a joint approach will certainly ensure economies of scale.
Thanks so much for that, Shabir. I just wanted to quickly highlight Adri Spangenberg put in the chat that the packaging PROs don't necessarily all have membership fees, only an EPR fee. I think that's an important thing to highlight to the attendees. So the next question is also for Shabir. Please, sure, yes, Chris.
Can we just pick up? I think it's in line with where we are at the moment. The question has come through from Mark Liptrot. It's on the Q&A process. He's asking, do levies have to be paid by both the packaging converter and the brand owner? I know this has come up many times. I think if we can get a couple of comments on that.
Keith, did you want to say something there?
It was what you build on what Shabir was saying around the municipalities. If I can just finish that and then go, then you can answer Chris's question. So as Shabir was saying, the municipalities and the metros have a real key role to play in this whole EPR scheme, because already they're constitutionally obliged to collect waste and do separation at source in certain waste streams. And they already have that infrastructure, and we have to work in unison to use that infrastructure and then slowly build onto that, as opposed to spending huge amounts of time, money, and effort re-establishing collection points and material recovery facilities. So that's really, really important that we have that cooperation. And likewise, as Shabir was also mentioning, there should be interconnectivity between the various PRO waste streams as well, to ensure, once again, that we also treat our waste responsibly. So if you just take it from an e-waste perspective, so most of the e-waste that comes into this country in new products is already packaged. So that packaging, when it goes to the consumer must know he can also take it to collection points, and we should know, we as a e-waste bureau should know where those collection points are for packaging, for example, as well, so that at the end of the day, the whole exercise must be done in such a way that the consumer is least convenienced at lowest cost. In a perfect world, each year we want to see the number of tons recycled increasing and the cost per ton recycled decreasing. That's the direction that I think we need to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Shabir, did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, no, sorry. Shabir, you were going to ask, I was going to ask you that next question. Chris, what was that question again?
The question came through from Mark Liptrot. He's saying, do levies have to be paid by both the packaging converter and the brand owner?
Okay, let me give that a go. And I think we'll also get Anban Pillay from DEF to, in my understanding, I could be wrong, Mark, in terms of the response, but anyway, it will be, the EPR fees will be paid by the producer. So the producer could be the converter / the manufacturer, or it could be the brand owner. That's how I currently understand it, but there won't be multiple, there won't be double charging of fees. Because the other important factor one needs to take into account is it could be the producer is responsible, but the point is where the EPR fee is levied. It could be if we take paper for argument's sake, it could be levied by at the point of manufacture by the SAPIs, the MPACs, the Mundis of the world, and that EPR fee could be passed down the line, and that would then be paid by the brand owner. So there's two issues we need to take into account. There won't be double charging of fees, and the other important part is the implementation of the levy or the EPR fees, I beg your pardon, could be levied at different points in the value chain.
Thanks, Shabir. Anban, do you have any viewpoints on that?
No, I think Shabir has explained it clearly, and the main objective is not to prevent double taxing or double counting as such. And yeah, I think he's explained it quite nicely and simple.
So maybe just to clarify that, so if I am a someone who's selling the packaging, how do I know if the EPR fees have been paid upstream of me? I don't know if I've understood that correctly, because Shabir, you said that if it's if the SAPIs that get reported as being paid already.
Sorry, you broke up there, Mark. I lost you. Would you mind repeating that?
Oh, so sorry. So the question was, I was just trying to get a better understanding. So if I'm a producer who is using the packaging and packaging my products in it, how do I know whether the EPR fees have already been paid upstream of me at the manufacturer of the paper or the packaging?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's consider yourself as a brand owner, for argument's sake. You're the brand owner, I'm the manufacturer. So when you buy the material from me as the converter of paper, for argument's sake, on your invoice it will state value of material, EPR fee. It will be a separate line item. So that shows it to the next in line that whether the EPR fee has been charged or not. So that would be the most practical way of implementing it. There's no level of uncertainty lower down in the value chain.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense. So Chris, were you happy with that question?
I think so. Mark can respond if we've missed anything, but I think it does clarify it.
Okay, great, thanks. So then the next question, which was we addressed it to Shabir, is please can you clarify on the definition for inclusion versus exclusion and which schemes are established and accessible in the Eastern Cape? I wasn't quite sure whether I understood that question. I don't know, Shabir, if you were able to make sense of what they were asking.
I'm not too sure, but I'm going to just look at the questions. If I could just look at it now, and I just want to see, I've made my notes here. How to reduce. I can't see what all waste EPR fee would decide. Packaging. Sorry about this.
Okay, no problem. Maybe let's leave it to the end and we can come back to it.
I've got it, Mark. That's perfect.
Okay.
With you. The question was clarification of definition for inclusion versus exclusion and which schemes are established and accessible in the Eastern Cape. My response to that was there's no, as it is national regulation, it will apply across the country, and EPR schemes need to be run on a national basis. That's answering the first question. Then there was a question which I will not answer. I'll ask my colleagues Keith or Patricia to answer after I finish the last question. The last question was, is there a category for glass packaging? Yes, and this question was from someone at VW South Africa, if I remember correctly. And yes, I think why the question was asked is what happens to windscreens, for argument's sake. What has been included in the regulations is container glass, which is all bottles and jars, primarily for food and beverage, and also used by the pharmaceutical industry. Then the second question, if my colleagues could assist me on this, is where does responsibility lie for car batteries that we build into the vehicles we sell?
Keith, I don't know if you can respond to that.
Yeah, thank you. So existing lead acid batteries, there is already a scheme in place, and it's been in place for many, many years. So if all of us know, unless you drive an electric vehicle now, but the old lead acid batteries, when you go and buy your new battery, there is a charge that they pay, and that charge goes into fee, and so the whole EPR scheme, so to speak, is already up and running and have been running for many, many years. When it comes to lithium batteries, which are the most prevalent batteries now used in electric cars and renewable energy and so forth, that's covered under the new regulations. And there will certainly be a fee for that, and there will be a take-back scheme put in place for that. But I must also say up front, right now in South Africa, we don't have a lithium battery recycling facility. We've been working with our partners in trying to set up a pilot scheme. We're quite far down the line with that. But so at this point in time, all lithium batteries from inverters, from solar farms, and all the rest of it, they would be either stored and then shipped overseas for treatment until such time as we have a facility in place. But yes, it is covered by the EPR, proposed EPR schemes. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Keith. And so just in line with that question, maybe another question I have is, would the batteries need to be separated from the car, or are cars included in the EPR, electric cars?
So yeah, so that's a good question, and I think as we all learn in this new scheme, there's going to be lots of questions which are going to require a lot of head scratching. But so if you take a conventional car, and if you just look at the components that go into that car, there are 37 components currently in an average car, not a luxury car, an average car, that would become e-waste at end of life. Electric harnesses, the infotainment system, the navigation system, the electric light bulbs. So all of those would be covered by the EPR scheme. So once again, just like anything else, separation at source. So if you take an old car, you want to start separating the components, the windscreen to one side, all the plastics to one side, all electronics to one side, so they can be processed accordingly and efficiently going forward. I don't know if that provides clarity for you.
Yeah, thanks. I think we'll leave that at that. So the next question, which I'm not sure whether this should be addressed to Keith or to Shabir, it's if I'm using packaging for my electronic devices, so someone who's selling electronic devices puts packaging around it, do I need to be a member of the packaging PRO and an e-waste PRO, or how does that work?
Well, if I could come in, Mark, my opinion of the my understanding of the regulations is that if it's packaging, then you will, because the paper and packaging is used to protect electronic goods. Now, my understanding is it's a different commodity. It's not the electronic goods, and that then the producer will need to belong to the relevant PROs. For argument's sake, if it's protected wood board, then you need to belong to fiber cycle. If it's polystyrene, they will have to pay EPR fees for polystyrene, because that material will have to be collected by the paper and packaging PROs. But I'm sure Keith and Anbin can add onto that as well.
Yeah, so if I can just comment on what Shabir said, and I agree with you, I'd like to hear Anbin's comment on that too. My understanding, and what we've advised our members, is that if you bring product into the market and it's already pre-packaged, that packaging will just be treated in the normal way. It'll go to a paper remanufacturer. They don't have to join the packaging bureau because it's not their core business. They're importing a hairdryer. I'm just using it, importing a hairdryer, which comes in a box. And the EPR fees already been paid on that at the point of manufacture. So it's only if, as we understand it, it's only if you're physically making and manufacturing packaging and then putting it onto your product in country that you would then have to belong to both a packaging and a e-waste bureau. Anwen, we'll put you on the spot here and let you answer that.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I understood both Shabir and Keith clearly, but from my side, very simply, and I'll use the same example, if you import a hairdryer, when it lands into the country, all packaged, the EPR fee will be paid by the importer. And the EPR fee should include the electronic and the packaging portion. And if you are a local manufacturer of hairdryers, you will manufacture the hairdryer itself, and then you would package it. Now, at the point of where you're packaging it, it's very possible that the cardboard box would already be, the fee would already be attached to it. Somebody would have paid the fee for the cardboard box. For the polystyrene that's inside where you place the hairdryer, there would have already been a EPR fee attached to that. And then for the thin cellophane plastic that goes around the whole box to make it look new and neat, the EPR fee would already have been paid for that. So the manufacturer would therefore only pay the EPR fee for the actual hairdryer and nothing else. That is how we envisage it. But in light of the changes with the regulations, we're also waiting to see how it's going to play out, because industry really wanted to let this portion be quite flexible, and which we as government, we've allowed that. We've allowed that flexibility. We didn't want to be too rigid. Okay, our view was if we make it rigid, then if you look at paper and packaging, we charge the fee only to Mondi and Sappi and we're done and dusted. If you look at glass, we target Nampak, we target Console, we target Asante Glass, and it's 3 people and it's done and dusted. But I think industry in the engagement wanted it to be a little more flexible, and we were open to that. Yeah, we will also see how this pans out. But I think it's a new set of regulations. We will have challenges. We will find people slipping through the cracks, or even people trying to manipulate the system to avoid the EPR fee. But we'll just have to deal with that whenever these things are picked up. I think it's a learning curve for both industry and for us as government, and we'll take it from, as one day at a time as we find it. Thank you.
Thanks, Anwen. Shabir, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think I'd also just like to raise the point and touching or adding on to what Anwen has mentioned. EPR regulations, this is our first iteration of EPR regulations in South Africa. So industry and government, I believe we both agree that they will, as we go along, we will need to make changes, amendments, because this is the first formal EPR process. We've had voluntary EPR processes which have been fairly successful for paper and packaging, but with it being formalized, just to give you an example, I was engaging with some German consultants a few weeks back. Germany, we believe they get everything right. They've introduced EPR about 25 years ago, but they've made changes to their legislation or EPR regulations 11 times already. So, we as Packaging South Africa look at this in conjunction with working with government as a work in progress, and certain tweaks and adjustments will definitely have to be made as we progress. This is only the initial stages of EPR, and we will certainly need to improve the system as we go along.
Okay, thanks, Shabir. So maybe just to finalize that question before we move on to the next one, Anwen, you said that if the importer, the EPR fees will be paid by the importer. So if you're importing electronic waste, it sounds like you need to actually join the appliance or the e-waste PRO and a packaging PRO, depending on what packaging you have there. Maybe not if you're producing in South Africa, but if you're importing it, then surely the packaging, you're also importing the packaging.
Yeah, Mark, are you referring to importing e-waste or electronic
Yes.
goods?
Importing electronic goods that are packaged.
Yeah, it's only fair because we don't expect the existing PROs in South Africa to pick up the tab for something that was manufactured in China, the packaging. So it will attract a fee here in South Africa, and the importer will be responsible. Whatever name you give that importer, but that importer will be responsible and accountable for that material. So if Chris is importing a whole lot of hair dryers, he will have to join the paper and packaging, he will have to join the electronic waste, and he will have to join the plastics or whatever PROs that are there. And he has to make his contribution. I hope Chris is not going to ask me how many grams each of this material weighs, and that's Chris's problem. Chris must do the calculation and Chris must declare this. But yeah.
Chris just wants hair. I believe Patricia can't find her hand up thing. Patricia, you wanted to add into this?
Yes, actually, a lot of the things I wanted to add in was covered by everybody. What I will add to this is if there is a necessity to join two PROs because you're bringing in two product types, then that capability will be there, because what a Light Cycle intends to do is to sign MOUs with these other PROs so they can work in conjunction with those PROs to ensure efficiency and that everything is recorded. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. I think that this discussion clarifies a bit in my mind about how that whole, if you're importing something that's already packaged, how that works. So thank you, everyone. I've got another question here, which was addressed for Anwin, is does a distance seller need to register and be a member of the PRO, or do just the distributors and brand owners? And does only one of them need to be a member of the PRO, or does each, the distance seller, the distributor, and the brand owner all need to be a member of the PRO?
Okay, I'm going to assume what the question was because you broke up quite badly there, Mark. When you talk about a distance seller, I'm not sure how to interpret what a distance seller is. So maybe if you can just provide clarity on what that is. It may be something that we have omitted because it's the first time I hear distance seller. What does it mean?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not entirely sure, but I assume it's someone like an Amazon or something like that who's selling it overseas, and then it gets sent via just a courier company to South Africa.
Yeah, if I hear you from what you're telling me, the explanation, then currently that's not covered as far as I understand. We do have a round of, changes or amendments that we're proposing. And I would appeal to the colleague or whoever has raised that issue to raise it during the commenting process with some proposals. I think we are actually, very tight on the timelines. So I think it's nice to put a problem. It's even better to offer us a solution, because we are government, we don't know everything. We're also learning as we going on this path. But yeah, if somebody can offer a solution, there are some proposals in the current changes that we've made. If it's not covered there, then we'd like to hear about it. As I said, if you're talking about the Amazon and Take-A-Lots, in my mind, I don't think they covered in the existing one, but they may be covered with the amendments that we have. But if not, please raise it with us. Thank you.
If I can chip in there, if I may, Mark.
Yes, Patricia.
Yes, so Light Cycle SA has got mechanisms and solutions in place for that problem, and there are ways that can be tackled. However, we will need cooperation from various government departments. But we will be happy to engage with DEF on that too, on those solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Shabir?
I think I see it slightly differently. If you look at Amazon, I think Susan put that on the chat. If it's an imported product, then the fees would have to be charged. In terms of how I understand the regulations, the EPR fees will have to be paid. We did suggest to the department that it could be the person whose name is on the bill of lading, or it could be the actual importer of the product, or it could be Amazon. So there are a few options that we can look at. So I don't believe that the regulations exclude that in its entirety. It all depends if people will declare that. But I think if it's big guys like Amazon that are exporting lots of material to South Africa, they will fall within the ambit of how the regulations are currently structured. But I do stand to correction on that.
Thanks, Shabir. Keith, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I think Shabir was going down the right road. So that's exactly as we understand it. In the current regulations, the brand owners like the Amazons and the take-a-lots and the one-day onlys, they would become the brand owners. They put in the products on the market, so they must take ownership of it. They must join a PRO and they must pay the EPR fee, and they can then charge it on to the end user. Because if you deal with those half a dozen online specialists, they cover 90% of the market. And yes, there will be some of the small guys that just bring in bits and pieces, and we'll get to them. But right now we've got to take the low-hanging fruit and the guys that are visible, and then we cover most of the market as a starting point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think that covers that
Mark,
question. Sure, Anwar.
Yeah, and I think, I like what Keith has said in that there would be the brand owner. But working on this for a number of years, I've not seen any of those guys even approach us. So it's possible that there'll be one of those that may not comply, not because of deliberately, but most probably out of ignorance. So I think the PROs have an opportunity to start engaging them. And even though this is a public document in terms of regulations, you are required. But yeah, I think the normal processes, if there's non-compliance, will take its course. But yeah, if it's not covered, as I said, then we will consider including something in the regulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Anwar. So the next question is actually for you, Anwar. So it talks about compliance and enforcement. So in terms of the compliance to specific EPR schemes, and to ensure that all producers, importers, retailers, etc., sign up and comply with requirements, who is responsible for the monitoring and enforcement of this? And what are the legal consequences of not conforming?
Okay, when it comes to monitoring compliance and enforcement, and maybe I might just extend a little bit to say that the existing PROs will have a certain level of monitoring that they will do. But the monitoring that they will do has got nothing to do with us as government. Government has its own mechanisms for monitoring and to ensure compliance and enforcement. Remember, private enterprises don't have any authority to do compliance or enforcement. There's no power for them to do anything to a non-complying facility. It is only us as a regulator that has the authority and power to do that. And so we will take responsibility for that in terms of enforcement and compliance. Yes, we will check for certain facilities. Remember, we do a whole host of audits. We check waste management licenses. We check SAWS data verification. We check a whole host of things. So even the enforcement arm of the department, which is the EMIs, when they go, they check air quality, they check EIAs, they check waste licenses, and the protected areas, all the pieces of legislation that the department administers, they check compliance against that. Nothing stops them from also checking compliance against these regulations. If there's non-compliance found or contraventions, then they will take the necessary action. Now, in terms of consequences for non-compliance, the regulations that were published are very clear, and I know there was a lot of people, a lot of hype around it, that it's too severe. Now, I don't know what's too severe, what you mean. For me, too severe is very subjective as a word itself. But when we're talking about the punitive measures, the regulations actually prescribe that there'll be a maximum of 15 years imprisonment, an appropriate fine, or both a fine and prison term. Now, the prison term that we put into the regulations, it's one of those things that that is in place in the existing pieces of legislation. So we cannot prescribe a different punitive measure to what is in the existing legislation. If anybody wants to change that, then you would most probably have to follow the NEMA amendment processes to amend that, and make your submissions, which goes to Parliament and Cabinet, etc. And it follows that legislative amendment process. And we just put it in because that's what is prescribed. So the punitive measures are prescribed in law already for us. So yeah, those are the measures that we put in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Anwar. I think, does anyone, Keith, do you have anything to add to that from a PRO perspective?
Thank you. Yes, Mark, I think as Anwar has said, I think it's just on 3 billion of the world's population is governed by some form of legislation regarding, in this case, e-waste and EPR schemes and so forth. But then if you look at the actual targets achieved, you'll see they're struggling to get to 50%. And it's been said that a lot of the reasons for that is that you've got the legislation, but there's no enforcement of it. So as Anwar has highlighted, so we've got a carrot and we've got a stick, and the stick is a big stick. So I think the onus is on us in conjunction with the regulator to raise the awareness around, guys, there is a stick, so let's comply. And I think once again there too, we also need to educate the public, the consumer, all parties in the value chain, that if they see or hear of somebody who's not conforming, to raise it with your PRO or raise it with DEF. And then it's for us to start the wheels in motion, because it has to be a level playing field, because you can't have companies investing hundreds of thousands of rands in infrastructure support systems to make sure that they're compliant, and others come in and they don't follow the same standard. The only way we can do that is self-regulation to a large degree, and ensure that we've got the mechanism to report and that those reports get acted on. And maybe it's going to take 1 or 2 examples, as we've just recently seen in South Africa. So yeah, I think we're now going to have the legislation, we've got the mechanism, it's just now all working together. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. So the next question moves more onto the reporting. So the question, maybe Keith, if you can answer this one as well, is with regards to what systems are in place for me to report the amounts of different items that I am selling? And will this include packaging? And I think that's kind of been covered already, the packaging aspect. But where would this information need to be reported to?
Okay, so in terms of the regulations as they are now, and bear in mind that, as Anwar said, there's going to be some updates published soon. But so there's 2 points. So firstly, they must, the person who puts the product onto the market must register with DEF. They must also register with the PRO. When they register with the PRO, they must advise the PRO what the anticipated volumes of product they're going to put onto the market for the next 12 months. And you need that, because that's a checks and balance, because don't forget there's a fee associated with that. And then each PRO needs to say, of the fee that I've collected, how am I going to spend that fee? I'm going to spend 8% covering the overhead of running the PRO. I'm going to put 10% to R&D. I'm going to put 20% onto education and awareness, and I'm going to spend 60% paying back the recyclers and the collectors to actually make sure that the product is treated accordingly. So that's the mechanism in place. Come the end of the year, And don't forget that as PROs, you have to report back to DEF as well as to your own shareholders. We will be reporting back on a quarterly basis to industry. We'll do a roadshow and we'll say, for the quarter that's just gone by, we've collected X amount of tons from our members, we've recycled X amount, and this is the money that we've collected, and this is how the money has been spent. So vigorous reporting that's independently validated is really, really key, because you're going to be dealing with large sums of money and large volumes of product. And if the figures and the numbers are to be believed, we have to ensure that we've got these independent auditors as well as our internal processes as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Shabir, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add about reporting.
Well, I think it's been covered pretty well. There's nothing I'd really like to add on reporting, but just I think just a point I'd like to add, Mark, is, as I mentioned at the outset, and Keith touched on that, a lot of producers over many years in South Africa, and also importers have been very guilty of this, is that, as I mentioned, paper and packaging collection rates are currently 58%. They have got away for 15, 20, 30 decades without paying absolutely nothing in terms of the voluntary schemes that we have in place. So that is why we welcome, as Packaging SA, the EPR schemes, because the playing fields have now been leveled. It also has given importers and certain local producers who haven't been paying voluntary levies or /EPR schemes a competitive advantage, because they're saving on that expense. So really, the goalposts have shifted. The playing fields have now been leveled, and I believe that EPR will certainly make a difference. And yeah, we're not going to have these free riders any longer.
Thanks, Shabir. So the next question refers to the EPR fee. So I think earlier in the discussion, there was mention that each waste stream will have a different EPR fee, but it'll be per ton. So the question is then, who will decide what the fee is and how often will it be revised? Shabir, maybe you can start there.
Yes, certainly, of course, Mark. Well, different materials will have different EPR fees, as you have indicated already. The fees will be charged on an annual basis, will be adjusted on an annual basis, which has to be submitted to the department. And sorry, I missed the first part of the question. What was the other?
So who will decide on
Yes,
what the fee is?
Okay. It is the producer, in terms of the legislation as it's currently drafted, is the producer will determine the EPR fee. But we've engaged with DEF, and I believe we have consensus. It will be the producer, but the producer will be part, or the producers, not all of them, because you could have 1,000 producers, will be on the board of directors of the PRO. So it'll be a combined arrangement between the producer as well as the PRO to set a fee. And the fee needs to be realistic. It can't be too low, because then you're not going to meet your targets and your objectives in terms of the EPR regulations. And if it's too high, there's also problems. But what will also circumvent that in terms of, because at the end of the day, you and I as consumers will be paying those fees. So what is important is we need to report to the DEF as well in terms of how funds are being spent. So there will be checks and balances in place as well. And I believe the fees will be adjusted annually. And what could happen over the years is, as more infrastructure is put out into the place, there could be the possibility of EPR fees be declining over a period. It all depends in real terms, not in nominal terms. The other issue is what one needs to look at is, yeah, EPR fees will change. And there was something else I wanted to add, but I've just lost it now. But when I get back to it, I'll raise my hand. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Shabir. Anwar, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And it's a key part. I think that's what people are waiting to hear on this particular question. Yes, Shabir indicated that the PRO will be setting the fee, and there'll be board members, some producers, representatives, etc. But what the public out there also needs to know is the fee that is being set will be submitted to the minister, who has the prerogative to get the Minister of Finance to look at it and interrogate the number before approving such a fee that can actually be charged to the consumer, because we need to protect the consumer, and this fee primarily will be recovered from the consumer. So yeah, so just to give some assurance that Treasury will be looking at this proposed fee. Thank you.
Thanks, Anban. Keith?
Yes, yeah, it's a good question, and I just from our side, we'd just like to clarify some of the comments that we made to date on this. So it's a collective decision between the PRO, the producer, the recyclers, the refurbishers. Each one has got input because they each carry costs in the supply chain. And it can't just be the producer say, this is the fee we're paying, because obviously common cause, you would want to have the lowest fee possible, but you have to say, what is the lowest fee possible to ensure that the scheme can be maintained and is sustainable? Because if you look, and Europe can teach us a lot of lessons in certain areas. So where the PROs have failed in Europe, it's because of liquidity. The PROs have run out of funds to maintain the scheme or to provide sufficient incentive for people to go and recycle it. So it's important to get the fee right. Secondly, that once again, it lends then to the costs. So there's already a tendency, as I say, there's blood in the water because people are smelling money, and now all of a sudden they want to form PROs because I think they can sit on the board and start earning big fees and all the rest of it. And so a PRO should be a not-for-profitable and should be a lean run business where by far the biggest volume of the spend needs to be put into the take-back scheme. So that's really important. But at the end of and bearing in mind, as Anban was saying, at the end of the day, the producers are the initiator of the fee. In other words, they're the first one that pays the fee across the PRO. But the consumer is actually the person that pays the fee. So we've got to make sure, I've been taught long ago in business when I became a director, don't make any decision that you're not prepared to defend publicly. So you must be able to make sure that you can stand up in a public forum and defend your fee, why it is and what you've done and how you've spent it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Patricia, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Keith and Shabir have covered all the points adequately. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Coming back to Michael Bird has put an interesting question on there, just in terms of it's kind of been raised already, but they're saying, can the brand owners run their own initiatives to achieve targets? And I think this comes back to understanding how many different types of systems and EPR models can we have, and how do we structure it? And I think that it is something that has been raised. And I think it's in the wording also in terms of the EPRs that they need to either submit or be part of an existing PRO. So if we could get a comment from that, perhaps from Anban.
If I hear you correctly, Chris, can brand owners run their own scheme? If that's the question, the answer is a straightforward yes.
In terms of the department, I mean, if every single brand owner had their own initiative, it's going to be interesting to see how you're going to run and manage that.
I'm not sure what is that, just a statement, or is it a comment or a question? I'm not sure how to interpret that.
No, it's just a statement of reality. I think if we had every single brand owner setting up their own EPR scheme, and then each of those has to be monitored and evaluated and audited and assessed, I think it could become very difficult to try and manage and operate that in the country. And I don't think that is what's happening in the rest of the world either. I think it is done through PROs as opposed to individual brands.
Yeah, if I may respond, Mark, I don't want this to be a dialogue, but if I can respond, that's we have offered industry a lot of flexibility. We also have the Competitions Commission that we have to comply with as government. So we cannot create monopolies. We had one monopoly and we know what happened. I think the whole country is still bleeding from it. So in light of the Competitions Commission and the, our reservations of creating monopolies, we have made this open. And I think government's capacity or capability very often is underestimated. And for whatever the reason that might be, I'm not sure. But with regards to EPR, we are presently developing a whole new module, a reporting module for EPR. And if we find that there are 1,000 brand owners running their own scheme, we will make provision for 1,000 brand owners on the electronic system for them to report. We have a wonderful system called the South African Waste Information System. And we see there's not much faith in it. And any system, what you put in is what you get out. And I think I want to stop with that right there. What you put in is what you get out. And we know that there's a whole host of people that are not reporting, are not complying. And maybe just to put you in the picture, we are currently in the process of prosecuting 4 municipalities for not reporting. I'm talking government. We are prosecuting 4 municipalities for not reporting. So that's how serious we are taking that. Now, when we develop this CR module that we have on the cards, if people don't report, they will be prosecuted. I think we are tired of handing people with kids' gloves. We are removing the gloves now and we're taking people head on. We deliberately started with the municipalities. We anticipate what industry is going to react if we prosecute an industry first. They will say we are using them as soft targets. But be that as it may, we have started this process and we are on it. So I think with the statement that's made regarding capability or was, I just want to give that assurance that we have some developments on the card that should be able to take care of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anwar. Shabir, did you want to say something quickly?
Yes. Looking at it from a slightly different perspective, currently as the way the regulations are drafted is, either a producer could form their own scheme, as Anbin has indicated, or they could join a PRO. However, in terms of international best practice, what happens is you don't even have 7 PROs is what we have, and there could be a plethora of PROs emanating in South Africa because, as I think Keith alluded to, people could see this as a big money spinner, but it is not the case. In Europe, in many countries in Europe, they have 1 PRO for argument's sake for all material streams. So ideally for a producer, unless you're a very huge producer and you have the resources, you're going to carry those huge costs of the full value chain in terms of EPR. So ideally, it would be best to join a PRO. But if you want, if a producer wants to run their own stream, they're welcome to. But definitely, as I mentioned, with regard to economies of scale as well earlier, if they belong to a PRO, then the cost will certainly be cheaper. But that's a decision left to each individual producer. But in my opinion, I don't believe we're going to get thousands of producers forming their own schemes because the cost of compliance will be exorbitant.
Okay, no, thanks, Shabir. So there are a few questions about the recycler side of things. So I want to get to those before we run out of time. So the first one is, say for example, there's a recycler that at the moment charges a gate fee for recycling a hazardous waste. Anbin, can you elaborate if there's a plan in place on how the recycling of cost-negative streams will be funded, especially during that changeover phase from the recycler charging its customers to the recycler charging the PRO for the recycling to happen? What happens if there's no funds available because producers don't comply, those sorts of things?
Yeah, and if I hear the question clear, I'm not sure, firstly, what the purpose of that gate fee that is currently being charged. What is it? It's not clear. I don't understand that. The regulations provide for the PRO, the producer, to ensure that products are collected and recycled at the end of its life. The cost of these activities normally should be funded through the fees that are collected, and form part of the budget for the EPR scheme. The cost of collection and recycling activities will be determined by the PRO or producer or brand owner, etc. In the event that the PRO or producer contravenes the regulations, then they will be committing an offense which carries penalties as prescribed in the regulations. Now, when you start talking about the issue of funds not being paid, that will be a contravention of the regulations, because the regulations are quite clear. So I'm not sure what answer was being looked for or what answer was expected, but I'm giving the answer related to the regulations. I think that's the most I can do. But yeah, if you feel that the question is not adequately answered, I'm open to get some clarity from you on what they're seeking, and then I can respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Anban. Keith, maybe you can.
I can jump in if that's okay.
Yeah, Patricia.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Anban, I think the question is more directed at the current situation versus the new regulatory situation in November. So the current situation, the recyclers are compensated, especially for the negative fractions, are compensated by their clients paying them to process and treat and so on. And that keeps them, that keeps their business going. Now, when this change is over, the customer is not going to be responsible for paying that cost anymore, but the PRO or the producer is responsible for that. During that changeover time, if there's not adequate mechanisms in place, the recyclers and their systems can collapse because they're dependent on that income. So I think the question is more how that changeover time is going to be managed to ensure that there's enough funds to support those recycling operations. Is that a bit more clearer?
I'm not sure if it's more clearer. I still don't understand where does government fit into this, because it's quite clear. As a PRO, you must have sufficient funds. If you don't have sufficient funds, you're in contravention of the regulation. So the PRO will be held to account because we've given you sufficient time to build reserves. We've given you, we've delayed this for a number of years, I can put it that way, in terms of EPR. So I'm not sure what answer you're looking for, whoever's asking the question. But yeah, Patricia, I think you've provided something. But as I said, the PRO must take responsibility. You can't ask government to step in. Government will just put in the penalties that are there.
Okay, yeah. So yes, the enforcement side comes from government. The PROs will obviously act on behalf of the producers. But this is it needs to be made clear then from a regulatory standpoint that when these regulations come into effect, that must be that the PROs and the producers must be ready for that. Thank you, Anban.
Thanks, Patricia.
I'm not sure. Sorry, Chair, through you, without making this a dialogue. But Patricia, I'm not sure how clearer we must make it. The regulations are very clear. Any contravention comes with a penalty. So I'm not sure what additional information or what other further clarity we need to include in the regulations. And I'm willing to hear what your proposals are on that, to cover this, to ensure that the recyclers are not prejudiced in any way, because we have a PRO that has not kept the end of the bargain. That poor PRO is going to be in trouble. There are penalties there which talks about revocation and deregistration, etc. So those things will be fully enforced. So if you have some brilliant, innovative ideas of how we can prevent such a situation, I think I'm willing to listen to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anban. Keith, maybe quickly. I know we are running a bit short on time, so if you can go quickly.
So I think this is a real critical question. It comes back to what I was talking about earlier around liquidity. And for all existing recyclers, this is a very real threat if not be handled correctly and dealt with correctly. So as has been alluded, existing recyclers have been charging a fee to go and collect hazardous waste or waste from various producers' sites. Now, in terms of the regulations, that will fall by the wayside, and they will then go to the respective PROs and ask them for that fee. And that is why there has to be this cohesion, agreement, transparency between producer, collector, transporter, refurbisher, recycler, to make sure that the fees are understood and what portion those fees can be paid. And we came back and earlier on, we spoke a lot about the paper trail or the audit trail. Exactly that. So every recycler, for example, needs to be able to say at the end of each month, I've recycled 10 tons of e-waste made up of these products from these producers. Here's the serial numbers, here's the destruction certificate. Based on the fee that's been agreed, the recycler will know that he can get X amount. If there are transporters involved, exactly the same thing. They would say, I've transported X amount from point A to recycler C. This is the fee that I'm looking to collect from you. And the PRO must pay those fees. I just want to come back to one last thing quickly that Anbin had said. We haven't yet had time to build up reserves because the regulations have just come out now. So we haven't got reserves. So we're going to be running a very, very, very tight ships, certainly for the first year to get it right. But if we do it correctly, and we have got 6 months now from the 5th of May through to the 5th of November to work hard to make sure that, and once again, the difficulties are, and these are the practicalities that that everybody needs to know is, as a producer, or sorry, as a PRO, you don't know yet how many producers are going to be your members. So you've got to put a budget together. How do you put a budget together? Because you don't know which producers are still going to join your scheme. So there are a number of challenges that are facing us over the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Unfortunately, because we're running out of time here, I don't know if we're going to be able to answer the remaining questions. Maybe one quick question is, Anbin, you've said a few times that people must submit solutions to you. How do we go about that? How would I be able to submit a problem that I see and the possible solution to it? Is there a way to do that? Anbin, are you there still?
I think you lost the feed.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question. I was actually taking a call. My apologies for that.
No problem. Anbin, I was just saying, so you've said a few times that if people have solutions to potential problems, they must submit them to you and you'd have a look at them. How would I go about doing that, sending you something, a proposal or a solution to an issue?
Okay, we're about to publish amendment regulations. And when the amendments come out and it doesn't cover your issue, then you can, part of the consultation process, you can submit your inputs to us. And the reason I'm saying that is, you see the amendments, I think it's about 20 pages long, if I recall, something to that effect. And if you feel that the amendments that are there, the issue that is not covered does not lie in the amendments, I think we will still take some comment on that, even though it's not an official commenting process. But because this is the first new set of regulations, we will engage with the minister to try and address it. We don't want to put in a piece of legislation that is not implementable. And as a result, it creates more chaos rather than the intention that it laid out for. So okay. I'm saying that people find that there are issues, they must please raise it with us in writing, preferably, because then there's a record. And the other thing is, we are fully cognizant that we're not going to get this thing 100% right at our first attempt. Neither are we going to get 100% of the affected community in line or start complying or to even participate in these systems. We will have challenges. We will find people trying to slip through the cracks. We will find people trying to evade paying these fees and collecting and not paying up, similar to the VAT issue. We know that this is going to happen, but just in a matter of time, we'll be able to address it. as we get into the system, as we are able to track and follow the fees and how it's being implemented. So it's a learning curve for us, as I indicated earlier on. And yeah, we will try to accommodate the changes that come in. If there are changes that we can make that are easy, we have something that we have in law called substantive change. And substantive change requires us to consult with the wider public and stakeholders at least for a minimum of 30 days. Now, if the proposals that come forth are substantive changes to what the regulations are, I think people will have to, accept that we're not going to be able to do it now. We'll wait for a year or two of implementation and then consider some amendments, which at that stage we will consider these changes, the proposals that are being put forward to us. Because it's just the process. We cannot hold back the regulations just for the sake of somebody's. We must put in a new definition and then delay the whole process for another 6 months. That's not going to happen. I don't think the minister will consent to something like that. So that's why I think we will be open. It's by email. My email address is available, I think, to most people, so they can submit that during the commenting period. And yeah, maybe just a closing remark. I also have another engagement to attend to at 16:45. I'm cutting it very close. But yeah, the department's name from the 1st of April, and this is not an April Fool's joke. From the 1st of April, the department will be known as the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment. Okay, I see everybody is referring to us as DEF now, but from 1 April, it changes to Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and Environment, which is DFFE. Okay, I just thought I'll save that for last. Okay, I'm not sure if we come to the end, but I unfortunately have to leave, and my apologies. I trust you will excuse me, or if you're just going to be a minute or two more, I can wait and end off with the rest. Try not to be rude. But yeah, my apologies if I suddenly disappear. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much. I think that does bring us to the end. Unfortunately, we've run out of time and have gone over a bit. My apologies. Just quickly over to Nash Duki for the final vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you to the panelists, the participants, and the organizers of this webinar. It's definitely shed some light to me. I'm a landfill engineer, so I'm playing with geosynthetics and stabilities and containment barriers every day of my life. So this is a different aspect to me. But anything that helps the reduction of waste to landfill is very welcomed, because in South Africa at the moment, there's a bit of a crisis and there's limited available landfill. So we all look towards the 5th of May and see where it goes from there. I also invite you to become members of the Institute of Waste Management. There's various benefits to that. You can get us on www.iwmsa.com. At the moment, there's 1,179 members. There's many benefits. There's individual members, organizational members, and patron members. So once again, I invite you to go to our website and to become a member. Thanks again to everyone. I just want to leave you with the last saying by Robert Swan, the author. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. So hope to see you all soon, and thanks again. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.